Welcome to The Buzz. We're going to have some fun, hear things you'll never hear anywhere else, and learn how to take 1 hour off your marathon PR. That may be an exaggeration, but I am Buzz Burrell, and we're going to have real conversations with the people who help define this amazing sport of running, which often feels like more than just a sport. So send me your questions and comments to buzz@ultrasignup.com so we can do this together. This is a production of Ultra Sign Up. Thank you for joining me. Arc'teryx is the revered manufacturer of mountain clothing and is continuing its big push into running shoes with the new Nivalis, a shoe especially for winter. The Norvan 4 Nivalis has a full Gore-Tex cover and ankle gaiter. There are other Gore-Tex shoes on the market, but if the laces and tongue are showing, water just enters through those openings. The full Gore-Tex cover is the only way to keep your feet dry and warm. The Nivalis is the winter version of the successful Norvan with a Vibram light base outsole and deep 6mm lugs. It's great for running or hiking, and it looks as good as it performs.
Hey, Buzz.
Zoe, is that you? Wow, it's so good to hear from you. I've missed you.
It's me, one of your top 5 favorite podcast producers, back live and I guess not in the flesh, in the pixel.
In the pixels. Zoë Rom, thanks so much for joining us. And of course, you with Brendan Leonard co-host the Trailhead podcast, also on Ultra Sign Up. And so if anyone has any doubts of how sharp Zoe is, just tune into the Trailhead.
Well, I don't know if you actually have to be sharp as long as you have a good enough editor and producer. That's the real secret of podcasting.
Well, Zoe, thanks for joining me. This is going to be so fun because this is a special 2-part end of year episode. We're going to first review what happened in 2025, and then we're going to go forward and say what's coming up in 2026. It's going to be broken into 2 parts, and we need 4 people to comment on this, and I've got 3 so far. So here's the 3. First, or actually second, we're going to hear from Scott Johnston, a coach who's changing the game with his focus on strength and fatigue resistance. Then we're going to get the perspective of a race director, Craig Thornley, Western States 100, so he knows what's going on firsthand. And lastly, we're going to hear from Allison Mercer, who manages fastest known time and who is fast enough to be on the U.S. 50K and 100K teams for the World Championships. But Zoe, we need a 4th. So here's what I'm thinking. I think we need someone who's really smart and cheery, a journalist who's been published by the New York Times, and if such a unique human being exists, who is also an excellent ultra runner, having finished 5th at this year's Run Rabbit Run and 2nd last year at the Leadville 100. Can you think of anyone like that?
Geez, that sounds like such a specific person, and honestly, I don't know if we could afford them.
Good point. Good point. They might be asking too much.
A little out of our price range.
Yeah, such an amazing individual might be out of our price range. But I think that with your co-hosting of the Trailhead, maybe
I can get us pretty close, right?
Yeah, you're going to give us a cut rate deal on this appearance?
Exactly. Here at Ultra Sign Up, we've always punched a little above our weight class.
Zoe, thank you so much for helping me out on this. Everyone's going to be really happy to hear your thoughts. And so let's...
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. You're wearing your little Ultra Direction Christmas hat. I'll strap into my holiday weight vest and we'll get this show on the road.
Our first question, and we're going to ask the same question of everyone. You're going first. Zoe, what do you think was the biggest news coming out of 2025?
So this is big news. I don't think that it's particularly unique news, but I think that the sport is still reconciling with the paradox of professionalization, because historically trail running has really built its identity on being the sport of sorts. Dirtbags in the mountain, aid stations with beer and bacon, nary a carbohydrate in sight, finish lines where the winner waits to cheer on the last finisher. But increasingly, now there's real money, global media coverage, athletes with nutrition, sock, anti-chafe balm sponsors. So I think that I'm still really closely tracking what does this growth look like. And some of the signs of professionalization in 2025 that I wanted to point to was how real prize money is now. UTMB has gender equal purses across all finals distances. Majors have guaranteed payouts. There's also a shoe technology arms race that we're in the midst of. Carbon-plated trail shoes are costing anywhere between $250 to $275. Hoka Tectonics is $275. The Nike Ultrafly is $260. Now the average cost of a trail shoe is $150. So I think the super shoe conversation that has dominated road running has fully arrived and is fully reshaping the trail space. And a little inside baseball here, I think the media infrastructure is changing and professionalizing. UTMB live broadcasts 12 races with drone footage, runner cams, multiple language commentary. The Golden Trail Series, the short distance sort of pinnacle events, have incredible TV quality production. And this simply wasn't a thing 5 years ago. We're also seeing athlete economics shift. Top athletes are scheduling their seasons maybe 18 plus months out. They're managing UTMB index points strategically. They're negotiating appearance fees. And we're also still continuing to see corporate consolidation. Ironman owns 45% of the UTMB group. That's triathlon private equity money reshaping the sport's biggest platform. So those are sort of the symptoms of professionalization that I'm looking for and that I saw in 2025.
And of course, you and I, as top level podcasters, we just bought condos next to each other in Puerto Vallarta. So that's something.
I mean, I always got into trail running media for, both the prestige, the money, the power, and the fame. It's really the rock and roll lifestyle that keeps me here. And I think that something I've learned from listening to you is paying attention to the fact that the grassroots is still the foundation of the sport. And that's not a vibe. We see that in the data. Only 1.7% of trail runners actually race at all, not just last year. Less than 2% of people are ever going to hand over money and pin a bib onto their t-shirt. The passionate core, though, folks that are maybe skewing a bit more Zoe, do 5 or more races a year, but most people aren't chasing prize money. They're chasing buckles, they're chasing community, they're chasing experiences. Backyard ultras, which to me sort of symbolize the ultimate in anti-corporate race formats, are booming. Right now, they're 8.6 of all ultra sign-up finishes, and the Backyard Ultra and the 200 or more mile race are the fastest growing race distances. They are smaller sample sizes, full data disclosure, but the rate at which they're growing and expanding far outpaces even the 50K. But again, and I'm going to be curious to hear Allison's input and even Craig Thornley's, races like Hard Rock still operate on volunteer power and a kiss the rock finish. Technically still isn't even a race. And FKTs still have a lot of cultural relevance. Shout out to you and your development's buzz. And I think they've really become the ultimate grassroots expression. No entry fee, no prize, just you and a GPS watch.
Excellent. Well, I think, Zoe, professionalism is going to be a recurring theme here. So thanks for calling it out. And I appreciate that. I also note that, as you said, the prize money just went next level in a couple of years. Run Rabbit Run was almost the only one stateside that did anything worth mentioning. And now Nike ACG threw down with a $150,000 purse just at Broken Arrow. So I appreciate your take on professionalism.
Yeah, I'll be so curious to see where this goes, and some questions that I'm still sitting with and that I know that you're always seeking to answer is, does this professionalization erode what makes our sport special, or can it coexist with grassroots values? I think that with time, attention, and stewardship, it absolutely can coexist. But I'm also curious to see if we're okay with trail running becoming a sport where you feel like you need $275 shoes to be competitive. You're not going to be able to hang in the top 10 of Western states unless you're rocking some pretty serious technology underfoot. There was also, of note, the Killian/Zach Miller open letter sent to UTMB that raised concerns about rapid expansion and sporting rules. And I'm always curious to see, are these athletes and stewards of the sports really being heard, or are they just being managed? I also think that one moment that really stood out to me was when the guy who wins Western States, Caleb Olson, holding his newborn at the finish line while wearing a sponsor kit worth thousands in the media value. Is that beautiful, or is this dystopian? Or like many things in the sport, is it maybe a little bit of both?
And maybe maybe everyone decides for themselves.
Exactly. We're
And I
not here to
appreciate
tell people how to think.
your 1.7% statistic is brilliant, Zoe. Thank you very much. And you mentioned the average sale price of $160 for a pair of shoes. So in case anyone's wondering how the arithmetic works, I think we all are supportive of professional runners and the professionalization of people getting paid for what they do. But those shoes paid their salaries. So
Exactly.
I just got to be kind of clear. The 98.3% of the people who are out there buying shoes at retail are the people who are actually paying the pro runner's salary. So it's a fairly simple arithmetical equation.
I really consider myself a patron of the sport, which how much money I spend on shoes. I feel like I'm single-handedly keeping the trail running economy alive here.
Well, we all are. And Zoe, that was brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next person to help us make sense of 2025 and launch us into the new year is a coach who comes from a mountain athlete background rather than pure running, and maybe because he's not in that old box, has helped runners make major breakthroughs. I'm looking forward to hearing from Scott Johnston. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks a lot, Buzz. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm really looking forward to this. You founded Evoke Endurance, and listeners might not have heard of that, but they may have heard of the two seminal books you co-authored. First was Training for the New Alpinism with the legendary hard man and mountaineer Steve House. And then with Killing Jornet, who people have heard of, you wrote Training for the Uphill Athlete. You combined the principles of, shall we say, cross-country skiing with mountaineering and with ultrarunning with great success.
Yeah, those, I think the endeavors that what I was trying to do with those books was summarize what had worked for me over a fairly lengthy, 30-year coaching career in unconventional, but certainly more traditional sports than, let's say, ultra running. I needed to learn how to coach, in my case, cross-country ski racers. I coached at the World Cup level for about 15 years. And what I needed to figure out is how can we apply the knowledge base that's out there for traditional sports, whether it's swimming or cycling, running, road running, all the traditional endurance sports. There's an enormous body of knowledge about those. And I wanted to figure out how to put those into play for these non-traditional sports. And the first one was alpinism, mountaineering, and then obviously that's transitioned into the sport of ultra running, mountain running.
It has indeed, Scott. Let's put a finer point on it so all the listeners are eager to hear your perspective. A few months ago, Tom Evans and Ruth Croft both won the UTMB Mont Blanc Championships in commanding fashion, and you coach them both. So that's why people are going to be happy to hear your perspective on what's coming in 2026. And Scott, one last question before we get into that. Is it true that instead of prescribing Ruth Croft run endless miles to build endurance, that you apparently focused her on running up hills in a weighted vest?
I wouldn't say that was a focus, but we did include that type of training and have for years. I mean, this is a method I started using with cross-country skiers in the early 2000s. And I'd used it earlier than that with climbers, mountaineers, alpinists. So it's something had long experience with. And both Ruth and Tom have used this method now for the full time I've coached them, which is, I think, respectively, 3 and 4 years roughly each. And so it was really nothing new for them to do this type of training. And when I say it wasn't a focus, it was, these sessions were once a week maximum. So
Gotcha.
it wasn't like they were doing every run with a a 10 kilo pack on their back.
Right. But strength and fatigue resistance are some of the new buzzwords in the sport of ultra running. And so this is why we would love to hear your thoughts on a few broader topics, Scott, because you've had some breakthroughs in this one. So if we could, I'm going to ask you a big general question. In your opinion, what was the biggest news of 2025? What moved you? What excited you?
Well, I have to be somewhat selfish in this answer because I even though I have coached a number of Olympians in cross-country skiing and coached people to podiums and world championships in that sport, this was without a doubt the high point of my coaching career that had to have the two of them win that race. So I'm a little bit selfish on this. So that was a very seminal moment for me. And so I would have to say that on a personal level, that was the big, it wasn't just the big thing for 2025. It was the big thing for much of my coaching career. Because it even though these methods that I've been using for, like I said, over 25 years, and for at least 3 or 4 years with Tom and Ruth, were nothing new. This was the first time we were able to put it together in such a way that both of them, came out on top at the end of the race. So it sort of said, okay, this stuff. I know it works, and I've seen it work for both of them, off and on, but this really solidified the fact that, okay, these methods actually do work. And I think that's what kind of brought the publicity, after their win there.
Right. Well, good job, Scott. And I think a lot of people noticed this. I think when ultra running was started, if I may say so, the old days, it was just go out and jog, trot, or run. Endless miles. It was like high mileage, and that was about it. You just did a lot of miles. But now people are realizing strength really helps, and you know how to train strength. And I think this is a breakthrough for 25. I appreciate your comment. I think most ultra runners, most runners are noticing that fatigue resistance is one of the determinants.
It certainly is. I honestly believe, even working in the sport of cross-country skiing, where the shortest event on the World Cup is 3.5 minutes, and the longest event is about 2 hours. But in any endurance sport, fatigue resistance is the single biggest limiter to the actual performance of your performance in that event. And it doesn't matter if it's 3 minutes or 3 hours or 30 hours. That's what makes athletes slow down in these types of events. So yes, if we can enhance the fatigue resistance of the athlete, we will undoubtedly improve their performance.
Excellent. Well, I think this is big news for 2025, and you are one of the progenitors of it. So I think announcing this success applies to me, applies to all our listeners who probably can get a little takeaway here, can't they?
I would say so. I've written and spoken copious amounts about this topic for decades now, and so there's no secrets to it. And if people want to learn about how to do this, there's information on our website, there's information in the books, there's information on our podcast. I don't make a secret of any of this stuff, and it isn't rocket science. Honestly, it's really not that difficult to train it, and there's many different ways to train this type of thing. There's no one secret recipe that works that doesn't work for other people.
Well, thank you for bringing that highlight to us from 2025, Scott.
Well, you're very welcome.
If anyone has their pulse on the changes in ultra running, it is our next guest, who is a race director. For which race, you may ask? We're talking about the 100-miler that started them all, the one that crosses the Sierra Nevada mountains every June, and the one that this year featured runners from 30 countries. Welcome, Craig Thornley.
Thanks, Buzz. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be joining you.
Well, thank you very much. You just finished the giant lottery, so you don't look too sleep-deprived, so congratulations.
Thank you. I am still recovering from it. In addition to the lottery, which is a big weekend, I have a lot of people at the house, and obviously the actual event is pretty big. I'm 6 weeks post total knee replacement, so I've been dealing with trying to take care of my body and my sleep and my pain. So I'm actually doing quite well considering all the stuff that I've had in the last few weeks.
Congratulations. Old age is not for sissies.
No, it's not. But I'm glad I didn't wait till my 70s. I'm 61 right now. I'm glad I didn't wait till my 70s to have my knee replacement.
You have been the race director of the Western States Endurance Run, in case people didn't guess what we're referring to, for 14 years. And fortunately, you have already finished it 8 times, or is it 9 times? 9 times yourself. Hopefully, there'll be a 10th after that knee comes back and after you retire from being race director.
Yep, that is correct. I had 8 finishes before I took this job. And I ran one time in 2017 as the race director, and I had a 7-hour PW. And I will never do that again. I'm not going to run it again as a race director. It was the actual race day was okay, but I was so tired by the start of the race that I decided I'm going to have to wait until I retire from this job. So I got this new knee. I'm going to be rehabbing it, and hopefully soon after I retire, I'll get a qualifier and I'll run my 10th Western States, and then I'll be done.
And then you'll be back on our podcast.
I'll be back on your podcast. That would be great.
But for now, I mean, States is just massive. I mean, it started as a horse race, the Tevis Cup, and only later evolved into a running race. And it is thus an integral part of the origin story of running. I mean, the history of Western States Endurance Run is sort of like reading the book of Genesis in the Old Testament. And it's notable how, to continue on that thread, how progressive the organization has been. You established a pregnancy deferral early on. You had anti-doping rules early on. You have a who's who, this all-star board of directors. So, Craig, I think you are going to be an amazing person to give us a perspective on 2025, coming in 2026, and how you're feeling about the sport.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned the Bible, because I often say that, some of the changes, to make changes in an organization that's been around this long and this entrenched, it is like trying to rewrite some of the Bible at times. So it's pretty amazing that we've got these progressive policies. Credit goes primarily to Diana Fitzpatrick, who was the past president for 5 years. And yeah, I'm proud to be part of this organization. And we try to be leaders in the sport, and having our connection with UTMB, while sometimes we get criticized for that, we talk to them all the time when they're gonna implement a new policy. They're talking to us, and we're looking at what each organization is doing, and we want to be influential. So I think being connected with UTMB is actually a good way to still have influence in the sport worldwide. Europe is not going to necessarily do things exactly the way we do them, but we have a seat at the table, and we can talk to them, and they can talk to us, and it's good.
You have steered the sport in a very progressive direction. I was just going to state that. And Diana Fitzpatrick beats me by 1 place each year at the Dipsy, which is, we're going to give her that one.
She's pretty good.
She's pretty good indeed. So, Craig, we could, of course, talk for hours, but we're going to move into right now. What do you think, from your amazing perspective here, was big news coming out of 2025?
Well, I want to give you both the Western States centric answer and then a more global answer. The men's field at Western States this year was surprisingly deep and together early on. I thought once Walmsley wasn't there, and with David Roach saying right when he got the golden ticket at Javelina, he told me, I want to help the field go under 14, and I'm going to go at that pace. I thought for sure it was just going to all be strung out. The men would all be strung out, and the women would be the smarter, more conservative. The men, I was at mile 14 or so, a couple miles before Red Star Ridge, at this place called Elephant's Trunk, where we had a camera for the live broadcast, and there were, I think it was 12 guys together chatting like it was some Saturday group run. They were under the course record. We just couldn't believe what we were witnessing right there. And then, of course, they all, 6 of them finished under 15 hours, which was just mind blowing, including Caleb just a couple minutes off of Walmsley's record, and then Chris Meyer and Killian in third place. Not far off, and charging. If he had maybe another 5 or 10K, he might have won it. So I thought that men's field, that men's race was just mind-blowingly awesome and a surprise to me, even though I knew we had a lot of really fast guys in there. But I thought that was cool. And then on a more global, I thought Killian's states of elevation. I mean, I live in California, obviously. I live in Auburn. And I've climbed most of the mountains that he was doing. And I thought, okay, he got out of the High Sierra and he went and did White Mountain Peak. I'll try to go get on Shasta the same time he's there. And by the time I talked to Topher, who was helping him with some logistics in the United States, he had already ridden his bike all the way to Mount Shasta, I don't know, 30 hours or something from White Mountain Peak to Shasta. And he was on the mountain. The travel in between, the peaks were amazing to be able to do that. But the way he rode his bike, it wasn't just casual riding. That was serious riding in serious weather. And to imagine being that cold on those peaks, and then you get off of them right away, and you get on your damn bike and you ride. He didn't have all awesome weather, and then towards the end, it was pretty bad weather.
Craig, you're so right. I appreciate this because, Alex Honnold, Cedar Wright, they have this little video called Sufferfest 1, Sufferfest 2. And these guys are, really good athletes. And they're taking like 3 times as long to do it as Killian did it by himself.
Yeah. I'm a big Alex Honnold fan and Cedar Wright fan too. So I definitely enjoyed the Sufferfest. But yeah, the way Killian got to the mountains, I think that part of that whole thing, you can look at he did all these peaks like he did in Europe the year before, where he climbed all the big mountains in the Alps. But the way he traveled between them here in the United States it's next level athlete. And he's a runner. He's not a cyclist, but he could probably race in cycling. Those are some quality mountains he'd put on.
And of course, as you know, he did ski race. That was actually his first sport. And he won ski races. Yeah. And then he picked up running at age 21 and won everything. Well, Craig, I like this. States, you saw it firsthand. You saw the men's peloton come through intact, and then people hung on for insanely fast finishes. Yeah. And then appreciate you calling out states of elevation.
Yeah, it was impressive. He is an impressive athlete. And to have him at Western States this last year and now again in 2026, I mean, we couldn't be happier.
He said he's coming back in 2026. I'm a little surprised. Are you?
I wasn't sure. I haven't talked to him about why he's coming back, but he had hunger and he had a pep in his step at the finish, both on the track when he was finishing the race, and then at the award ceremony, he was running up to get his buckle. Like, he was nowhere stressed, right? And I wonder if maybe he thought I could go faster. Maybe I can be the one that goes under 14 hours. He hadn't run the race in quite a few years. I think 2012 was the last time he ran it. So it had been quite a while since he ran Western States. So maybe he was going out a little more conservative. I don't know, but it felt like he left something on the table that
wow.
Maybe. Yeah, it did. I know. It's crazy to say when they're running that fast, but it looked like he could do more here.
That's so remarkable. This is one of the changes in the sport right there. You've kind of identified it, and that the last time he ran it, he won it. This year he was third, but I think he was an hour and a half faster than the year he won it. And so, well, okay, the standards have changed.
Yep, absolutely.
And now, last but not least, as we continue with our end of the year review, we have as our 4th guest, the heir to the FKT throne, and the only person I know who's done yoga with Charles Barkley, Miss Allison Mercer. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. That's quite an intro. And all true, all random, but that's just who I am.
It is who you are. It's amazing. And I should elaborate on this a little bit. When I said you've done yoga with Charles Barkley, that could give us another million listeners, except some of the people listening to this might not know who Charles Barkley is.
The round mound of rebound, all NBA All-Star, MVP, never won an NBA title, but he certainly accomplished a lot in his NBA career.
And you've accomplished a lot too. So let me flesh this out a little bit. You have a huge background in media and sports media, which is really quite dramatic. We can't get into it all, but you literally are Miss fastestknowntime.com right now. You keep the ship afloat. So in case you have any complaint at all about submitting an FKT, just talk to her. It's her fault now.
My bad.
And you're on the current 50-kilometer national team, which just got canceled, which is why you're here in Moab right now.
Yeah.
You didn't go to India because the race was canceled. You're an extremely good runner. You were on the 100K national team and finished 12th in the world championships. So Allison is an outstanding runner and has got a huge background in media. That's why her opinion on these topics is going to be very helpful to all of us.
Or at least someone, whoever's listening.
Allison, of course, our first question, as you know, is what was big for you in 2025? What did you see?
Oh my gosh, I saw a lot. And reflecting on the year, I would say it was another year of strong female performances, whether it was Tara Dower at Black Canyon, Lake Sonoma, Long Trail overall FKT, Javelina setting the course record. I mean, is there anything she can't do? It's absolutely incredible to see her race. And not only after last year setting the overall Appalachian Trail FKT, I was like, what else is she going to do?
Right.
She's just going to run fast in all these, premier races and show everyone that she can do it all.
I like that. And of course, you live in Atlanta, Georgia. So the AT is in your backyard.
Yeah.
And Tara has the overall FKT on the Appalachian Trail.
40 days, which is absolutely incredible for a trail that's nearly 2,200 miles.
And so what you're seeing is, would it be too much of a cliche to say the year of the female runner?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because you had so many other performances, such as Abby Hall turning strong from surgery at Western States, Ruth Croft's dominant performance at UTMB. You had world record performances at Tunnel Hill with Ann Flowers setting the 50-mile world record, Katrina Jennings with the 100-mile world record, and Courtney Olsen setting the American record in the 100K, breaking an Ann Friesen 30-year-old record. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers.
I like it. You're so excited. I like the excitement in your voice.
Yes, I mean, it's just, how can you not when you see performances? It's like, what is the best performance? It's hard to say because every single one has a special meaning and a special place that you're just like, it's iconic what
Wow.
these women are doing.
All right. Wow. I like that. Excitement in your voice is coming right out. These weren't just facts and figures.
No.
This is exciting.
Yeah, I mean, there are facts, like they are records, but it's just, I love seeing it. Not only do I like competing, I'm a huge fan of the sport, as you've heard and as you know by talking to me and me just wanting to talk about the sport. It's how can you not be when you see performances like this, or even like on the track we saw in World Championships, breaking 4 with Faith Kipyegon, with Sydney McLaughlin-Lavroni almost breaking the 400 meter record. I mean, it's just Beatrice Trebet setting every kind of record. I mean,
Right.
It's so incredible, no matter if it's the road, trail, or track.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm feeling a little shy now because, I'm starting to think about what my big takeaway was for 2025. And I'm feeling like a fuddy-duddy after this wonderful call out to all these great athletes. Listen, here's what occurred to me, which is a little broader, just the massive increase in professionalism. Another great female athlete is one who kind of brought my attention to it. 2 episodes ago, we had Molly Seidel on the podcast. Check it out if you haven't heard Molly. And she kind of kicked me in gear when she said, I'm going to quote her right now,
Mm.
passive sort of humility is when everyone is too scared to say what they actually are going for. But then I have found people are actually so intense when you talk to them in person. And then she's getting into trail running now, as you know. Then continuing to quote her, feeling where the winds are heading in trail running, I think it's gone from like, I'm just going out for fun running in the woods to trail running has become a truly elite sport. So that's coming from an outsider's perspective. Like she's saying, like in another way of what you were saying, everyone's bumping it up. It's going to another notch. So I appreciate Molly for saying that. That's for athletes. Now, regarding events, a couple things caught my eye.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the UTMB group added another one recently. By the time this podcast comes out, they could have added 3 or 4 more. And so I'm not even going to tell you, it might be at 60 events.
Oof.
This is called Rothrock in Pennsylvania, which I've actually never heard of.
Mm.
So that's continuing to move the needle.
Now, do you think professionalism or the increase in that is a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, wow. That's an excellent question. So I've indeed called out professionalism as my main takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying. To me, it's neutral. I think listeners could say, oh, everything Buzz is saying, I hate. Or some people can say, hey, wow, the sport's becoming more professional. That's great. I'm neutral. I'm just saying these are my takeaways.
Gotcha.
Right. So thank you for asking me that. So here's a good example thereof. Other one regarding events is ACG.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm going to say? All Conditions Gear, which is Nike's division. They started it way back in 1989. They're stepping back in. And so they're sponsoring the Gorge Waterfalls with a $75,000 prize purse.
Incredible.
And Broken Arrow, which has only been going, forgot now, 10 years, $150,000 in prize money, which is about what UTMB Mont Blanc is paying out. So that's a big chip in.
Oh, yeah.
That's some serious dinero. And, on one hand, trail running doesn't respond to scale. It responds to community and culture. You can't buy your way into it. But Nike, in case people don't know, it's larger than all other sporting good companies in the United States put together. So if they want to throw down, they can move the needle significantly. Another quick little context, since we're talking about professionalism, there's this guy named Michael Jordan.
I never heard of him. Is he any good? Is he
was.
getting into trail running?
He's not getting into trail running, but he was really good to the degree that 25 years after he played basketball, in 2025, he will be paid more than all mountain, ultra, and trail runners put together.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's insane.
But not surprising given the amount of Jordans that I always wanted growing up. And
You never had Air Jordans?
I had one pair.
Okay.
I had the original Jordan 1s.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Always wanted the Jordan 4s, but maybe for Christmas. Maybe it'll be under my tree.
Okay, you're listening, husband Ben, newest iteration of the Air Jordans, and then you could kick into those massive coffers. But it's just a way of saying professionalism and context, and Nike getting into it is kind of a big player.
Definitely. And the amount of athletes that they signed this year shows that they're willing to back it up. Plus, ACG helping the World Trail team with apparel. You saw, I don't even know what you call the white shirt. I call it like a doily, or what your grandma.
the mesh, the super mesh.
Yes, that Caleb Olson even wore for
yeah.
Western States.
The super mesh. That's space age.
Yeah, or and Kipchoge was wearing. In New York. So, who knows? Maybe we'll see Kipchoge on some trails too.
Wow. Well, he's got pace.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent, Allison. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. We're back with Zoë Rom for our second question of the episode. And remember, stay tuned for the next episode. We're going to get to the next 2 questions, but we're going to wrap up 2025. So Zoë, a few minutes ago, I asked you the biggest news coming on in 2025, but what was the low light? What was disappointing or kind of weird to you?
Yeah. I would file this news maybe not just under weird or disappointing, but I don't totally know how I feel about this. And this news is Sabrina Stanley announcing a sponsorship with OnlyFans. and the larger trend of OnlyFans moving particularly into the female athlete space in 2025. So I want to sort of start by naming the obvious that women in endurance sports are chronically underpaid relative to men, and sponsorship structures are precarious and exploitative for many people. Athletes are responding rationally to a market that undervalues them. So I'm not here to critique an individual. I'm here to critique and question a system. Sabrina Stanley or any other athlete isn't the problem. I believe she's making a savvy business decision within a pretty fundamentally broken system. And for me, the question isn't, should she do this, but why does this option exist at all? And what does it reveal about our sport and our world today? So the sort of uncomfortable math that I find myself wading through here is that there's something deeply revealing about the fact that women can earn more showing their bodies than they can by winning ultra marathons. That's not a common...
We should take a quick pause and explain what OnlyFans is.
Yes. OnlyFans, for those of you lucky enough to not know, is a not safe for work porn adjacent content website that has really stepped into the athlete sponsorship space, not just trying to actively recruit female athletes, athletes really of all genders, but particularly women to their platform, but also explicitly paying them sponsorship dollars similar to a Red Bull. So the idea is that athletes can use the OnlyFans platform to, yes, share fascinating tidbits about their training and racing, and also fascinating tidbits about their physical bodies as well. So this is something that I have what I would say are big feelings about that, again, I don't totally know where I land. So I'm hoping that we can all wade into this complexity together.
You framed that very well. I like the way
you
didn't say this is stupid, this is great, or what. So you put it in a very balanced perspective that you're wondering. And I think everyone is kind of wondering. And I would say that OnlyFans, I think porn adjacent would be the better term, if I may. I mean,
it's not
nothing,
hardcore, but it's
right.
Also not something I would fire up at the bus stop.
Not safe for work is
Yes.
correct, but hardcore, it very, very much is not. I think what you're saying is, females have been underpaid, relatively speaking, and so this is a way they're going to get paid more.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, if you're a professional, you're paying for eyeballs. I mean, honestly, if you're a professional runner, you're going to go win a race. It's not that you won the race, it's just that people saw you wearing the shoes. So you're actually selling impressions. And so Sabrina is kind of just taking it one step further. Instead of racing, she's selling visual impressions of something else.
Yeah. In addition to, it is sort of a yes and thing here, which again, I have complicated feelings about. It's absolutely not a commentary on Sabrina or any individual. I think it's a really important examination on how we value women's athletic labor versus their physical bodies as either objects of desire or athletes in their own right. And, even though I had mentioned earlier the, UTMB equal prize purse, the pay gap in trail and ultra isn't just about prize purses, though equal prize purses are essential. It's about who gets shoe contracts, who gets renewed after injury, after pregnancy, during parenthood. And it's about whose marketability is always innately tied to appearance. And I think a segment of this discussion that I don't like is the sort of language of empowerment that it often gets meshed in. So I think that particularly in the trail and ultra world, empowerment has sort of become a slippery word that often means individual woman makes choice in a constrained system. We call it feminism, and the system is allowed to remain unchanged. And I want us to try to hold two things in our hands at the same time, that women have every right to do this, and it's genuinely working for them in some ways, and the existence of this so-called solution doesn't fix the underlying problem of a lack of parity and equity, and it might even let brands and our culture off the hook for not investing in it. And I think another question I have is it feminist for women to have more options, even if they're imperfect ones? I think so. Is it feminist to need those options because the traditional structure has failed you? I think that's a harder question. But I think that something that's worth looking at when it comes to the OnlyFans model, there are some surprising things I found when looking into this that I think we can learn from. With OnlyFans, there are no exclusivity clauses, no performance-based cuts. You get support through injury and illness, as Sabrina specifically has with her cancer diagnosis. And in some ways, that is more humane than traditional running sponsorships. If I was a shoe brand, and I knew that OnlyFans was treating their athletes better than I was, I think that would be a very convicting and challenging piece of information for the C-suite to wrestle with. There's also a direct-to-fan model. This is something that we see not just on OnlyFans, but also with the emergence of Patreon that cuts out gatekeepers and lets athletes own their relationship with the audience. I also think there's something genuinely subversive about refusing the purity performance that female athletes are often expected to maintain, and sort of refusing the idea that showing skin diminishes your athletic credibility is in itself its own form of misogyny. So.
Wow. Zoe, you've teased this apart brilliantly. It's nuanced. It's
Yes.
very nuanced, and you've done a good job of showing this. It's not just, oh, this is stupid, oh, this is great. You've teased it apart, and you're asking very good questions. These questions have been asked for centuries. We talk about OnlyFans right now, and of course, you could bring this discussion over into the so-called world's oldest profession.
Exactly.
Which obviously is very controversial, and there's some talk of empowerment there, but usually not at all. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. There are 3 industries where women typically are outpaid by men, really only 3. And those are social media, modeling, and porn. And OnlyFans is kind of all of those wrapped in its own weird little bow. And hopefully this isn't the clip that gets taken out for social media, but I can't stop thinking about OnlyFans and what it means. And I think for me, it means, why aren't we asking brands like Hoka or Solomon, why can't they pay what OnlyFans can pay? Why is it easier for a platform associated with adult content to support a female ultrarunner than some endemic brands to do so? And I think the running industry loves to market quote-unquote empowered women while structurally uninvesting in them. They love to slap a female face on things without doing anything to change what their C-suite looks like, what their compensation structure looks like, and how they're actually trying to move the sport forward. And I think that hypocrisy deserves more scrutiny than any individual and any specific platform. I think that Colleen Quigley's Meridia project sort of functions as an interesting comparison. It's the same impulse, autonomy, and athlete-owned structures, but different execution and a little less skin. And I'm curious what it would take for that model to be viable in the world of ultra running. So again, the nuances that I want us to hold here are where I've kind of landed is you can feel weird about it and still support women making decisions that feel right to them, if it in fact it is a decision they made that does in fact feel good to them, and if is definitely a load-bearing word in that phrase. And you can acknowledge that choice feminism has limits without being paternalistic about other women's decisions and without just piling additional critique and comment onto women who just eternally bear so much more pushback than men do in the world of sports. And for me, my goal in bringing this up isn't necessarily to arrive at a verdict, but it's to ask better, smarter, and more compassionate questions about what this trend reveals about the economics of women's sport, particularly in our industry. So I think what I'm left with is that the real win isn't more platforms willing to sponsor and commodify women's bodies. It's an industry that values women's athletic performance enough that they don't need alternative revenue. The only way that this could be seen as a real autonomous choice is if every other choice was as open and as viable for every female athlete. And I don't believe right now that that is the case. So
that's the bottom line summary right there, Zoe. You just said it. Everyone can make their own choices. Sabrina's making her own choice. We have to let her make her own choice. I mean, it would be crazy not to do anything but that. And yet what you're simply saying is you wish that the other options were just as good.
Yes. Yeah.
And we will be hearing from Craig Thornley, race director of the Western States 100, coming up here. And of course, they have a very good policy. They've been very progressive, and they've fed back their policies to the UTMB group. So the UTMB Mont Blanc has pregnancy deferrals now. This is all in the just the past 2 years, I believe. So
Yeah.
sport is definitely changing for the better, but definitely not at parity yet.
Yeah, definitely not parity yet, but I am buoyed by some of this trickle up equity we're seeing. And again, looking at the power of the grassroots in the sport, the way that athletes and activists are pushing the sport forward on the ground level, on the community and local level, is moving the sport, albeit sometimes kicking and screaming, forward.
Thank you, Zoe. Okay, I am back with Scott Johnston, the coach of Evoke Endurance, with our second question. Scott, this is really open-ended, so answer it however you want. What do you think is the weirdest or the most disappointing thing from last year? I should say, pardon me, from this year, 2025.
2025, yeah. Well, this is a difficult subject, but I think it's the doping scandal that occurred at the CCC with that
Wow.
young Kenyan woman. And it's a tragic thing. I've been in, having been involved at the world class level in the sport of cross-country skiing, I've, and raced as a skier myself in the 80s through the 80s. I saw doping firsthand. And I've seen the effects of it with athletes. The Russian Federation has been banned from the Olympics because of, not just occasional athlete doping, but an entire system of doping that that country has been administering for years, if not decades. They're about to be reinstated for this Olympics, which there's a lot of controversy over. As you can imagine.
Oh,
So this
actually,
whole
Scott, I did not know that.
Yeah. After the 2014, the Sochi Winter Olympics, there was a systematic doping done by the Russians.
It was documented. There's a movie on this topic.
Yeah, exactly. That movie Icarus, or I believe. Yeah, it's a fascinating tale. I mean, it's something that everybody in the sport knew was going on, but then when it was documented and it was shown that this went not just at the athlete level or the coach level, but right to the federation that was governing the sports, and probably to high levels in the government, in fact, that were promoting this. But having seen the effects of it, like in cross-country skiing, where the young junior skiers, for instance, that do get pushed into the at the high level, and they're encouraged to do this, to use performance-enhancing drugs, and it's a little like cycling probably was in the 70s and 80s, and say, hey, if you don't take this, there's 50 other guys standing behind you that will take this. And that's the difference between you being on the World Cup and potentially having this incredible athletic career, or going back and driving a truck in the lumberyard. These are your choices. And I think that sadly, in the case of this young woman from Kenya, where, I'm sure she and her family live at a standard of living that most of us in the West can't even conceive of. And so the temptation to cheat is enormous. And in some ways, it's a little disingenuous for us in the West with our wealth to judge someone harshly that way. I mean, I can understand from what she said, and I don't know anything about her personally at all. But knowing what I know about in the Russian situation, in cross country, and the doping there, I can empathize with what she must have been going through and the struggle of having to decide whether she was going to cheat or not cheat. That being said, it certainly doesn't help the sport to have that kind of thing going on, but it saddened me on two levels. One was her personally and what she must have struggled with, to the desperation she must be feeling to want to cheat, to take this chance and potentially have her career ruined. Solomon's certainly not going to sponsor her again. But on the other hand, saddens me to think that, okay, I hate to see this sport go down the same road that so many other professional endurance sports have gone down. Cycling has certainly had its own issues. Cross-country skiing, road and track running has certainly been blemished by this. So I guess for me, that was a big disappointment to see that come to light.
Well said,
especially
Scott.
when I saw her there in Chamonix, and everybody was so excited that she won the race.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
all these,
Yeah.
can you imagine all the people now who feel let down about, that. And so anyway, the whole situation I think was tragic.
Well said, Scott. And you had compassion, you had understanding, and you identified that it's still tragic for many different reasons. I mean, you had sympathy with her situation, how she was extremely motivated to make some money for standard of living. While at the same time, it's cheating. You can't do that. And you've had experience with other sports, cycling, of course, most famously, and it's not a good place for us to be going. And with the rise of professionalism, that question is definitely coming up, isn't it?
Well, it's the money in the sport. I mean, has changed dramatically in the last 10 years, which is kind of the span of my involvement in it. And, when money becomes an issue, or it's a big temptation to cheat. And if people who are in a much better standard of living and situation in their life than she must be in Kenya are willing to cheat, it's kind of understandable that somebody who's truly desperate to elevate their way of life or their standard of living, it's going to be very tempting to do something like this.
Right.
But I don't,
Right.
and I don't wish that we lessened the money in the sport, because I think it has elevated the level of the athletes tremendously by having more money in the sport.
Right. Promise and peril.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and I think the days of pretending that people are amateur athletes, when I was young and racing, we were not allowed to take any money from sponsors or anyone, or we would not be allowed to compete at the World Cup level, the Olympics, World Championships. And that was a joke. It was because there were certainly people taking money under the table at the time. But now sometime around the late 80s, early 90s, that all changed. And most sports governing bodies just realized, hey, we need to allow these athletes to make a living. And I think it's leveled the playing field tremendously by doing that.
That had to happen. And by the way, my first guest on this podcast was Frank Shorter.
Oh, golly.
Oh, golly, indeed. And so he was right there. He was this, the tip of the spear in terms of switching from this very hypocritical amateur status to allowing professionalism to take place above board and above the table. While at the same time, like you said, it's the promise and the peril go together.
Yep, they do.
Thank you, Scott. We'll be back to you in the next episode with our other questions regarding 2026. Okay, we are still back with Craig Thornley, the race director of the Western States Endurance Run. So now, Craig, we heard your big news from this year, 2025, and I really like what you called out with Killian's State of the Elevation and the very fast pack at your race, Western States. But what was the oddest or the weirdest, or what may have disappointed you that took place this year?
Well, there was a really funny one, and I know you have a good sense of humor, so you probably appreciate this. So on the live broadcast, Chris Myers was in second place coming to the river crossing. I don't know if you remember seeing this. And he's doing something on the near side of the track. And I was watching, like, what the heck is this guy doing? This is, I don't know Chris that well. He had run the year before, so I knew him, but I didn't know his personality. And he's donning a scuba mask and snorkel to cross the river. Like, what is this guy doing? It took me a while to realize he was joking, and he was worried how I would have received that. And once I told him, like, hey, dude, that was the funniest thing that has ever happened in my tenure at Western States. He was so happy that it went over well. But that was a really fun thing. One. I'll stay close to Western States again. One really disappointing thing for me. Usually I refer to the season before the lottery as the no season. And once we're past the lottery, it's the yes season, because I get to say yes to everybody, right? When you have 11,000 people in the lottery, or 11,300, and you disappoint 11,000 people, or they're all asking you for special consideration, or it's the no season. So the yes season is usually a really happy time. But on Memorial Day weekend, this woman came up to us who was in the race, 128 ticket lottery winner. She has some vision problem that didn't allow her vision to adjust quickly to terrain that's not smooth like a road. And she had just found out that on that Memorial Day weekend, not that far from the race, that we didn't allow poles. And she said, I don't have enough time to figure out how to run on these trails in this short amount of time without using poles. And it was really hard. I wanted to just say, well, yeah, you use the poles. She took it well because she had 128 tickets. She thought she'd get back in the lottery. She did not get drawn this year. But since then, in October, the board decided to finally allow poles and traction devices, which in a race, race that's been around as long as Western States, this will be the 53rd running since Gordy ran. Making changes like that it's often a multi-year effort. And I had tried to get it changed early on in my tenure, and I couldn't do it. It was disappointing, but it was a catalyst for change. So,
wow. Those are brilliant stories, Craig. The first one elucidates that, well, the Western States Endurance Run is literally one of the premier endurance events in the world. Someone puts on a snorkel mask to, cross the river, the race director is going to start laughing. And so I think that's so true to the sport. I mean, if you take professionalism is here to stay, your top 10 people at the States were just really committed. These aren't casual runners at all.
Yeah.
They're professionals. This is their job. And yet you can still pull a little humor like that and everyone totally appreciates it.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I got to talk to Chris a couple times since then. He decided not to come back this year, which I can appreciate. But yeah, it was really, really amazing that he was running really fast and he had the presence of mind to still do that. I could see maybe having that plan early on, and then you get there, you're in second place and you're close to winning the damn race and you got Killian on your butt. You're like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But he had the presence of mind to actually carry this plan through. It was really cool.
Well, you got to execute your race plan for success.
Yeah, he did.
And your second example of disappointing things or humorous things in that initial case for 2025 was how you had to say no to a person with a legitimate disadvantage. But that showed such compassion, not just an appreciation for a little bit of lightness, but that showed a lot of compassion, a lot of understanding. And the fact that in a race of this caliber, you got to stick by the rules. You got to keep the playing field level. And so there's a lot to your response to that. So thank you for sharing that. And I also liked the fact that just the biblical example, you're not going to change too easily. And whatever you say, someone's going to hate it.
Yeah. Or we've always run it this way. We've always done it this way, right? I've tried not to accept that as an answer when why do we do this? Well, that's the way we've always done it. No, that's not an answer. Why do we do it? And the poles and the traction devices, obviously having most of the sport in the world using poles, and 2,000 person races using poles, you're not seeing impalings. You're not seeing people getting stabbed by poles, right? They're not a dangerous, crazy thing. And it's not guaranteed to make you run faster on a course like Western States. In fact, I bet the elites don't even use poles at Western States, but for the back of the pack, for someone like this woman, or we've had many requests from older people over the years to use poles for that kind of person. I'll use poles when I run it on my 10th time. I think for many of the slower people, they're going to be helpful in snow years, and when your quads are trashed towards the end, you can just take a little bit of weight off. But it's not gonna suddenly allow the men to run under 14 or the women to run under 15:30. It's not going to do that. It's not a rule change for the professionals.
Good call. That's really a good reason to do the rule change. The times aren't going to change. Like you said, there's no way an elite runner is going to use poles in a course like that. Gates is a cruiser course. I mean, you got elevation change, and it's a tough event, heat for one thing, but you don't have the real steeps where poles are going to help out an elite.
No, and on the years that we have snow, the high country can be treacherous, especially on the old trail, the current trail that we're using through Granite Chief. There's a lot of side hilling, and it's dangerous. We had forget what year, maybe it was 2017, where we had a blind runner try to. Well, we've had two in my tenure, and he just got totally taken out by the snow in the high country. He couldn't navigate it. So
I believe that.
It'll be nice to see some of these folks who are going to benefit from using the poles and the traction devices. Traction devices, that one was weird. We had this really hard rule to defend where you could wear soccer cleats or track spikes. You could wear shoes that had traction, but they had to be manufactured that way. You couldn't put screws in your shoe like people do all the time who run in icy conditions just on their daily runs. And you couldn't put anything on your shoes. It was really a hard rule to defend. And it was. So the devices now, the micro spikes are just so easy to put on and off. And Camille Heron was actually one of those who asked for both poles and traction devices in the high country and the snow years. And I think we never had anybody get seriously hurt in the snow, but they definitely got slowed down, or they got completely scared, and then they wouldn't go fast enough to make the cutoffs. So both of those rule changes are awesome.
Well, I like it. You mentioned Dan Fitzpatrick. Of course, you also mentioned Topher Gaylord, another friend of mine, and Carl Hoagland, former owner of Ultrarunning Magazine. So your board is this all-star board, but I appreciate that esteemed though they may be, they also have been willing to move and change with the times.
Yeah, well, our board is pretty diverse. We have some who've been there from the very beginning, and they tend to hold on to the way things have always been. And then we have the newer folks like Topher and Diana and Carl, as you mentioned, and they're in the sport, or at least relatively recently, running races in elsewhere in the world, and they see how people are using tools, and it makes sense that we use the tools that we suggest people use when they're going out and doing FKTs or doing their own adventures, right? You need to be using these tools in training, so you might as well be using them in the race.
So, Allison, what was the most disappointing or weird thing in 2025?
I would say it's a little bit of a mixed blessing. I would say the big drug busts that happened this year. Both Ruth Chepengetich, her world record holder in the marathon, 2:09, getting caught in a test with a masking agent. So it wasn't, an EPO or anything. It was a masking agent. So she's facing suspension, which, puts, though her record still stands, it still makes you have some doubt of the validity of it.
Right. So it's very surprising to me. She was caught.
Correct.
She's going to be suspended, but the 2:09 world female marathon record still stands at this point.
Yes. So we'll see. I mean, there's probably more investigations. There's more things going on, I'm sure, behind the scenes. So hopefully, we'll see if it still is valid, or if maybe they'll appeal it.
And this came to trail.
Yes.
Also, two of the most famous trail races in the world.
Yeah. Joylene was caught as well and is serving a suspension too for a drug. And it's disappointing because
That was Sierra Zinal, I believe.
And OCC.
Oh, and OCC. Yeah.
So it's disappointing because, you want to think there's clean sport and these athletes are doing things the right way, but at the same way, the system's working. they're getting caught.
Right. It's just like you can't say no one should ever run a red light, otherwise driving, you can't drive. I mean, that wouldn't really work. So you can't run red lights and you get caught, you get a ticket, and that dissuades you from doing it again. So that's kind of the system.
Yes, and speeding as well, even though, sometimes there is a very fine line, but you got to obey rules. They're there for a reason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you had two things that were.
Yeah, the other disappointment I had was, seeing races that were getting canceled. The Grand Slam, Michael Johnson's brainchild of track, coming up with funding issues, investors pulling out, unable to pay their athletes, and maybe facing bankruptcy, which is so sad because there's such promise in seeing all these top-notch athletes perform. And then also seeing world championships canceled and postponed, whether it was the World Road Championship that was supposed to be held in San Diego.
What distance?
I believe the half marathon, 5K, and mile.
World championships were canceled.
Championships due to funding. And then also something that happened personally to me was the World 50K Championship. Though, to be honest, I am kind of relieved that it was postponed due to the air quality it was facing. I was even preparing with an N95 to face those air quality conditions. It was up to 400 parts per million, where that's just insane. The smog and everything that you see in videos and content in Delhi, it's just wild to think that you're running 31 miles in that.
Well, you're not.
Yes.
You're here in sunny Moab.
Yes, definitely a consolation.
And that's why you're, just to be clear, you are really training hard.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, if you're training in a N95 mask, you're committed, you're dedicated, you had bought your plane tickets, you bought your hotel rooms, and air quality always is bad in Delhi. So maybe they shouldn't have awarded Delhi the bid.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions within the team, USATF, of how we were going to prepare for it, knowing it's going to be quite frank, terrible.
Wow.
So, to have the masks, to take probiotics and do whatever it takes, because competing in the 100K championships in India last year, I still had, trouble breathing, and the air quality got up to, I think, 160 parts per million. So you're talking about nearly almost over double that. Plus the water, you can't drink from the sinks. We had cars on the course.
Cars on the course.
wild.
All right. So the rich kind of got richer and the poor kind of got poorer. Is sort of an interesting way to look at this, isn't it? Because I talked about professionalism and
Yes.
money coming in. Look at the World Marathon Majors. They're
Right.
paying out $500,000 in prize money. And yet just moving right down to something else, moving up
Yeah.
to the 50K Zippo and moving down to the half marathon Zippo. So
Right.
it's an odd situation.
Correct. And you see the world championships happening this year in Tokyo. I mean, it was really warm, but they had towels, they had aid stations, they had cooling, and all the things that they provided for that. I'm like, why not us too?
Right. A very mixed report. Let's put
Yes.
it that way.
Yes.
Wow. And, well, sorry about that. Although, kind of, I'm glad to see you.
Yeah, great to be in Moab. I mean, once again, I would love to be competing in a world championship, but I would say if it had to have an alternative, being in Moab isn't too bad.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. The thing that kind of got my mind was a little different in 2025. My wife, was a lifelong endurance athlete. And a clinical psychiatrist, was looking at a video feed or a podcast, reading an article, and she suddenly said, "Wow, what's up?" She asked me, "Is vomiting and hallucinating becoming glorified?" I was like, huh? What? And I had to process that. But if you read the material that's coming out, it's kind of all about the pain cave. And it's like, that's sort of interesting. And people are throwing up. And they're saying, well, yeah, I was hallucinating at mile X and I was hallucinating here and then I was throwing up there. It's like, yeah, I'm just, I'm tough. And it's like, she's going, that's actually you were sick, you were technically unhealthy.
Mhm.
And so that outsider's perspective, and I started to think about this. And then I read something that Brian Powell
Mhm.
wrote. I run far. I'm just going to quote this. The ultrarunning world is inundated with phrases like sufferfest, suffer better, and the like. In much the same vein, there's talk in the trail and ultra community about warriors, battles, and fighting. Continuing to quote Brian, I think the prevalence of such suffering-based or macho-themed messaging is a detriment to our sport. It's like, well, thank you, Brian. I agree. I'm just so that's my disappointment, or what kind of caught my eye in 2025. And running, in my opinion, is supposed to be fun.
You mean throwing up and suffering isn't fun?
Well, maybe for some people it is, but then we might want to look at that if you see what I mean. And moreover, running is definitely supposed to be healthy. That's our brand.
Right.
This is good for you. That's what this sport is
We do it for fun.
That's what this sport, I think, is based on. So maybe for the rest of us who don't win races in order to put food on the table, let's be happy.
Yeah.
Let's be nice, and let's share those positive feelings with people that we meet.
So we shouldn't do the Courtney DeWalter Pain Cave or the David Goggins Stay Hard. You should kind of just have a fine line of what's normal, good for you, and something that maybe medically shouldn't be happening during a race.
I think the medically shouldn't be happening is a good way to phrase it. And of course, Courtney's a fantastic runner and a person. If that floats their boat, great. But I'm noting that maybe the rest of us might want to go into find other reasons to run and find a different approach to the sport. And let's not glorify unhealthy medical conditions.
Right. I mean, it's like you should go out and you should run, but maybe you don't need a copycat if someone is, having a rough race, or that's not normal.
Right.
And we shouldn't normalize, oh yeah, if you're not hallucinating in this race,
you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, if you're not like stomach goes bad, like, no, you're supposed to have a good race. You're supposed to feel good. You're supposed to be smiling at the finish line, not, dragging zombie,
Right. The death march, great, good. Be tough, be determined, all good. And yet healthy and happy, I think, is our brand and what's made the sport what it is today.
Yeah, I think that should be the goal for 2026.
All right. Thank you for joining me. I feel like I'm with all my friends. This is Buzz Burrell, and I'll be back 2 weeks from today, delivering more thoughts you've probably never heard before. This podcast is a production of Ultra Sign Up and releases every other Tuesday, alternating with The Trailhead with Zoë Rom and Brendan Leonard. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and click that button that says 5 stars, because that helps other people